So we're doing this podcast. There's this whole trend over the last couple years or whatever, right? With this, like people getting famous for being famous. Like this influencer thing.
Yeah.
Where I'm a girl with a big butt, and so now all of a sudden I'm cool online.
Yeah.
I guess the
just waist below pictures. That's it.
So, do you think that this trend will continue? Will there be influencers? Maybe not in the same capacity as it is now, but will this go on, or is this a temporary thing where 5 years from now this will be like the Backstreet Boys, where it's the boy band phase, the influencer phase, or 25 years from now is baby Dennis still watching, crazy,
still following,
whoever, the big butt girl, or the kid that plays video games online.
Yeah, well,
what's your take?
I think that personally, what's happening is people aren't trusting the main media per se,
sure.
And so they're looking elsewhere. And now that people have a voice,
everyone's got a voice.
Yeah, and I was on Ariana Grande's Instagram, and she's got 150 million followers. I mean, that is a huge audience.
Yeah, right.
And same with Kim Kardashian, 135 million. I mean, if these people literally wanted to, incite a revolution, they probably could, if you think about it. I mean, they would have to just post a picture and say, "I believe in this," and all of a sudden, all the tweens and teens and all, and all these people would start following that.
So you think it continues?
I think it'll continue for a while, and you know what? More power to it. I mean,
sure.
coming from my background and things like that, I think that people should have a voice individually, and if the media is going to be concentrated and talking about different things, especially the news and stuff like that, I think that they should be able to, as individuals, branch out and people can associate with that on a
sure.
smaller basis.
I think it continues. I think it'll evolve dramatically. I mean, now most people are, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I would bet, years into the future, there may be a new Instagram, so to say, that everyone's on. But I think the idea of people, expressing themselves and media and technology getting bigger and bigger, I don't see it how it reverses itself, in the future. It's such a valuable medium. I don't know. I think it's got to stay. I think it evolves, but it's got to stay.
There might be a shortfall, though. There might be a cliff at the end of it where, it'll sustain itself and it'll keep going up, but then maybe there's new regulation or something and it'll just fall apart or something, or
sure.
something, the freedoms that we have, especially for expression, do you think anybody would want somebody to have $135 million or 135 million people at the pull of a trigger? That's kind of a scary thought, especially coming from a government standpoint, to know that one individual in the country has
so much
thought or ideas of that many people. I mean, that's kind
it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see. It's always. I feel like an old man all of a sudden. Where I'm like, these kids, blah blah blah, but. We do the same thing, business-wise, personally. Everything's online nowadays. The social media kind of runs the world, and I agree. These influencers, they've kind of taken control of their own destiny and just like, hey, this is who I am. I don't need some big media outlet to give me a voice to talk to the people that want to listen to me.
100%.
I can take control of myself.
And also, in addition to that, I think it's just the idea of word of mouth expanding. So a lot of these people, because they have, at their disposal, social media like Instagram or Facebook or even Facebook Live or YouTube Live, where they can immediately get their thoughts right out, whereas back in the day, they would have had to publish something in a newspaper or issue a statement.
And you'd have to pay.
Yeah, and now you have the
free
immediacy.
access.
You have the immediacy. You can just literally pick up your phone, say what you want, and if you have an audience of 150 million people, then they're
gonna listen.
And especially, I mean, people get in trouble for it all the time. I mean, for instance, I know recently Kevin Hart got in trouble for something that happened on his Twitter account 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
That's just resurfaced, and it stopped him from being an Oscar host.
Right.
I mean, things like that. Those things are inevitable, I feel like. And who knows where that's gonna bring us to. But for small people and businesses and people that don't have 150 million followers, it is still a good avenue to have individuality. That's really the underlying thing.
So, like, we're obviously this is Square Up with GraySquare, our podcast here. Follow us on all of our social media stuff. Since we were just talking about that, we need to be the next influencers. Dennis has a big booty, and he's going to be the next big thing. Waist below. I think it's cool. I think this episode will be kind of fun. A lot of times our podcasts, even our videos and stuff like that, a lot of it is from a business perspective. Or a marketing perspective or an advertising perspective, because that's what we do. Mm-hmm. Dennis, who's our guest today, he came from kind of the business space, but he's an artist, and he works in that that industry. And I think we'll get a different perspective on things today than we normally get. Like some of you guys are like, I'm tired of hearing about business. Maybe we'll have something cool to talk about that's not just here's how to take care of your people better. I think we'll get some crossover. So Dennis, why don't you just give us a little bit of the bio, so to say. Obviously, you and I are been friends for a really long time, but the world out there that Catalina thinks that we're not cool enough to be on video for, they don't know. They don't know you. So give us the background. So
a lot of the things that you spoke about are definitely applicable to the art world, and the dissociation from the business mindset and everything is what is a very common thing in the business world, in the art business world. And there's a lot of things that translate 100%, and there's a lot of things that translate somewhat that are nuanced. The number one thing, as far as the art business is concerned, I'm an artist. My background is in business. I studied in business school. I was fortunate enough to have a family of artists. My mother is an architect. My father is a professional artist who I represent now, and myself. And we've built the business over the last 20 years. But there's a lot of things that are applicable as far as marketing and business and things like that are concerned. So to say that it's completely different, maybe not so much, but to say that things are different, yeah, 100%. Sure. And a lot of it, most people have the general idea that art is something that, or an artist, what he does is, you put the white canvas on the easel, and all of a sudden, you're daydreaming, and then next thing you know, you're putting paint on your palette, and then you're just creating something magical. Actually, on the contrary, it's more planning than anything else. You plan it the same way,
same as a business proposal.
Well, yeah, same thing. Yeah. And that starts out with the sketch. Obviously you want to translate some sort of idea or feeling that you have, but you want to, you're putting the three-dimensional world on a two-dimensional plane. It's a canvas. For in my instance, I mean, some artists. You
mainly do painting, right?
Painting, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Same thing with your old man. Your father's a world-renowned painter.
Exactly.
Primarily painting, right?
Primarily painting. He's classically trained, so going back a little bit, when I was graduating high school. Well, first of all, to get to the real beginning, I immigrated here. So, we're a family of immigrants. We moved here from the Soviet Union in 1994, after the fall of the Soviet Union. And my mother is an architect. My father is an artist. When they moved to this country, my dad there's a big following at the time of artists that were never seen before because the Soviet Union was closed off. So, So, that's kind of where he found his foundation and built a following. And I was really young at the time. I was 7 years old when we moved here, and I had nothing to know about business or anything. I was just a little kid. So over time, by the time I was graduating college and everything else, I decided to go to business school because I thought it would be the most practical application of anything that I had known.
Yeah, right.
And, I painted and drew my whole life all through high school.
It was more of a hobby?
It was more of a hobby at the time.
Just a way to express yourself type of deal?
Yeah, and it wasn't something that I thought could be realized into a profession. Actually, up until maybe I was graduating high school, my perception of an artist and my father's vocation didn't even seem like a realistic thing because, all my friends' parents were dentists, lawyers,
traditional,
corporate workers and things like that. I didn't think that, what my dad did was anything that could be, feasible, as a business vocation or anything like that. Up until, when I was in college, that I realized, okay, obviously, people are actually going to art school and they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for their education. And then, beyond that, I just knew that I could just get the same art education if I wanted to for my family rather than spending all that money.
Yeah, right.
So I decided to go to business, and that's where me and you met. After I graduated college at Temple University here in Philadelphia, I worked for you and I learned a lot of what I think are rudimentary skills that I think anybody would learn, a lot from.
Yeah.
Obviously, it wasn't the best economical time. It was right at the end of
the
recession, which for the art business at the time, it was tough.
I remember when you first came into the company back in the day. I remember kind of the horror stories that you and your family, but especially like your father and mother, financially were going through at the time, just because of the recession. All of a sudden, there weren't as many wealthy people to spend $50,000 on a painting, which a lot of people are like, oh, dude, an artist sells a painting for $50,000, they got to be rich. But not if it takes you 8 months to do the painting, and you only sell one every 8 months. That's $50,000 a year. That's the same as a lot of jobs. If you're a manager at Wawa here in Philadelphia, you're probably making the same money as, like your father in the middle of the recession. So I remember a lot of that. And it is kind of funny to me how almost every industry does have some relevancy to like marketing, advertising, sales, business in some capacity. Even if you're like I was telling a friend of mine the other day, I was like, even if you're an attorney, like if Catalina needs representation and we're both attorneys, we're both equally educated, probably.
Exactly.
We probably both have really good track records. So who gets the client? Whoever's the better salesman.
Yeah.
Whoever's better at marketing themselves, whoever she's hearing about, as opposed to who can win the case in court. We can probably both win the case in court. So like a lot of the business stuff comes into it. Same thing, like when we first met, your father was, obviously he was an artist, and expressing himself in that capacity, but a lot of his job, so to say, as an individual artist, was to get himself in the right situations to actually move the art so that the next piece could come out, and so that it could keep going. If you stop the business side of it, kind of the art dies along with it. It's funny how a lot of that stuff. Like most people, me as well. Like I think of art, music, those things as kind of standalone. That they're, I guess, truer to culture than like businesses. Business is very capitalistic, of course. If you're a good businessman, all you care about is the capitalism side of it. Whereas, like to me, art is more of an expression, more of a feeling, more of an emotion, which doesn't really apply that much in business. But like literally, it's like once you get into it, you're like, well, we never sell anything though. I don't have any time. I end up working here and I don't get to express myself, unless I come from a rich family or something like that, where I can, where financial implications don't matter.
Well, not only that, with as far as art is concerned, it's not a necessity. You talked about lawyers. I mean, people need lawyers for all kinds of different things. I mean, whether you're dealing with a real estate transaction or anything else, I mean, that's something that's a very common service that's provided. With artwork, it's secondary, tertiary, whatever have you. It goes.
Yeah, it's not food, water, air.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like especially we're very reactive to economic transitions. So if there's an economic downturn, the artists really feel it the first because the discretionary income is the first to kind of be eliminated out of the budget.
Yeah, sure.
People aren't spending as much money on things that are I don't want to use the word frivolous because then I'm just kind of downtrodden.
Well, I was gonna say how do you I mean, we didn't have this in our notes, but there's if you listen to contemporary politics and stuff like that, especially related to education, a lot of times they'll say, oh, we need art and music and stuff like that in schools.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how ancillary are these fields? If I'm a kid in school, why should I learn about art? Mm-hmm. Like, is it literally just a hobby? Coming from an artist's perspective. Like, to me, I'm a business dude. Like, I'm very capitalistic in my head. So to me, I'm like, if I were, going to school, I'm just as crazy because I have my degree in history. If I'm going to school, it's like, well, I'm going to learn about how to provide for my family. Art is a hobby. Like, how relevant is that? Or, like, what am I learning as a 5-year-old kid that makes it valuable for me to learn how to paint?
Okay.
If I don't become your father, if I don't become you, what the hell's the point of me learning how to finger paint?
Let me put it this way.
Give us your 2-minute version.
Yeah. So, for instance, what's a vocation that is critical to human survival? Let's talk about doctors, right?
Sure.
So, if this is kind of an out there kind of analogy, but for instance, if 3,000 years from now aliens came down, everyone is dead and gone, what would a doctor be able to leave behind other than his notes and things that he may have taken, okay, to describe the time and era that he lived in? So if that were to happen, we've learned so much from the past. Most of our historical understanding of the past is through visual representation as far as art and paintings. There are cave paintings that were done 20,000 years ago.
It's kind of the crux of human language as well.
Yeah, art. I mean, all of language started from a visual, pictorial representation. I mean, that's how, hieroglyphics and everything, was creating the
modern languages.
Yeah, as far as letters and words and characters and things like that. So, I look at it in that regard as the fact that, okay, maybe in the immediate time it could not be as important. But I think of it as, some artists, there are people in the art world that are not so methodical and, fleshed out as far as where they want or how they want their art to be perceived. But I personally, and especially my father, who's been painting for the last 35 years, he, you think about what you're leaving behind. You're recording the time and place, and you're leaving a physical object that's going to survive yourself.
Do you, when you're going through to create, a visual art, do you think about that? Or are you just doing your thing? No. So are you thinking, how do I make this relevant to the world?
Yes, 100%.
Are there times though where you're just like, okay, I'm painting this for me?
Well, sometimes,
I don't care what the world thinks about it. I don't care whether this sells. Or even if it doesn't, I don't care if this ever goes on into the future. This is for me or me and my wife, family, kids, whatever, but it has nothing to do with the outside world. It's just for me. Well, do you do that? Or are you always kind of thinking of the cultural impact?
No,
whatever you want to call it.
No, I understand what you're saying, and to answer your question, no, not all the time. I actually, for the, what I was taught, especially from, my father, is you got to pay for yourself first.
Yeah.
But what you got to understand is what you leave behind is the stain of that. It doesn't matter whether or not you're thinking about it consciously. It's the fact that you're leaving a physical thing behind that's representational of something.
Does that cloud the art of it, so to say? Like if I'm, to me, from like the, I don't even know what you call it, like the side of things was the honest expressionistic portion of art would say, who cares? If I were playing devil's advocate, this is square up, so if we get into the fight sense, like, why wouldn't I say, oh, well, if you're thinking about what other people think, then you're not being an artist, you're not expressing yourself, you're trying to express their opinion or, the outside world, you're muddling the art. Or is that, am I...
No, you're 100% right, and that's how most people think, and that's what most of the population and their kind of stance on it. I mean, we have a gallery space that has 2 giant windows in the storefront, and the other day we were sitting there, I was stretching a canvas and getting a print ready, and embellishing, and then my father was there painting, and you have a group of 10 people together that were walking down. They didn't even turn their head to look into our studio. And they're like, oh, look, a kebab house, which is, a restaurant that's right next door to us, that they don't even bat an eye. But the idea is that, you're not thinking about that consciously when you're creating. You're letting the viewers and the people that are attaining some sort of interest from it, they are the ones that are going to be the ultimate kind of,
But you're saying, like, I hate to call it customer base because that's not the point of it, but your viewers or your target audience is somewhat in your mind at times while you're quote unquote expressing yourself. You may be thinking, okay, like, how do I create impact here for other people?
Well, to a certain degree, but it's not the people like you for who you are. You hear people say that to you.
Yeah.
And same thing with art.
So you're not catering to yourself. You're like the public is choosing whether they want an affiliation with you. And if they don't, you as an artist, you're like, oh, well, that's just one guy that doesn't, or one group of people that don't.
Let's put it into perspective. So there's an artist called Edward Munch who has the famous scream painting. Have you ever seen it where the guy's screaming?
Yeah, sure.
He's considered one of the most prolific artists in history. No one knows this, but he's got close to, if not more than 22,000 original works of art. But he was only known for that piece, which transcended into becoming the most...
And all the other ones had like very small target,
small
audiences.
I mean, no one even... there's a guy that found... in some wall in France, or he bought a house or something, and he found another trove of artwork from that same artist. There are things that people have never even seen from most artists.
Sure,
even Picasso. People don't even know that Picasso was a realistic painter in the beginning. People think that they only see, the contorted, cubist things.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, to begin to understand what cubist art is, they don't even, people are just think that it's just cube shaped, but it even has nothing to do with it.
Right.
So it's you're not keeping in mind your viewers, and that's the other thing that is kind of how I want to say is like a double-edged sword in the art world. Whereas in any other business, you're thinking about the consumer, and you're thinking about how that customer is going to react, whether or not they're going to buy or not, because otherwise there's no point in.
Yeah, and most of our business, my opinion, I tell this to my guys all the time, like, the only person's opinion that doesn't matter is yours.
Mm-hmm.
The consumer's the one that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I think something's amazing, but the capitalistic world says that's a stupid idea, they're the ones that matter from a capitalistic perspective. I think that, like, I think all the stuff that we've talked about in regards to like the crossover, the Venn diagram, so to say, as you put it earlier, before the podcast, of like how art intersects with business. Like I'd say that would be one of the differences, is that in business, it's about the consumer.
Exactly.
My opinion is definitely secondary.
Yeah.
So you're saying in art your opinion is more pronounced.
Yeah,
than maybe me trying to market the iPhone to the next guy that has an Android.
Well, here's the way that I would describe the business in general. First of all, it's buying art is not determined on actually the physical end product and buying it. Think of it more of like a profit sharing thing, where you're investing into, because the artist himself is an individual and a product in itself.
Sure.
That is just translated into a physical object or somehow connected to it. So you're essentially just buying into the idea that the artist himself, that you want him to keep on doing what he's doing. So, for instance, Shulkin, who's a famous art collector from the 19th century, he spent, at the time, millions of dollars in Picasso's art. And he basically, bankrolled him 100%. And most of those paintings, there's like 100 Picassos or something in the Hermitage Museum, because after the Bolsheviks took over, they took most of his art collection and just put it in the Hermitage. So in that regard, it's to think that like you have to like the art to buy the art, that's the wrong idea. The idea is that you have to like the, what is becoming of the artist himself, what he's creating, what his messaging is. So you're buying the whole package rather than just one object that you're going to put on the wall,
That matches my drapes.
Yeah, that matches. Yeah, exactly.
I remember fighting with Dennis not fighting, but I remember Dennis having 3-hour rant and raves about, dude, this guy only wants it because it matches his freaking couch. Listen to the point. So give us like a quick plug here. What's you guys' social media stuff? What's your Facebook account? Instagram? What's your Instagram handle?
So we have
for people. I know Catalina will post it, but what's?
So our two Instagram handles. I represent Andrei Procuk. My name is Dennis Procuk. My father's
for the people in the camera.
Yeah, my father's Instagram handle is Andrei Procuk, which is AndreiProtsuk. And then mine, I kind of differentiate myself. I use my middle name in it, so it's at Dennis _Andreevich, Andreevich. So I'm trying to kind of brand myself. I'm an emerging artist, so
sure.
I travel on behalf of my dad. I'm actually in the process of helping publish a full biography and a hardback book, which we're releasing by the end of the year, which is super exciting. We do 2 tours in England with his artwork.
That's cool.
Yeah, and
how's the writing process?
Excruciating. Only because there's so many photographs. My grandfather was a photographer and an art restorer and painter, but he was an avid photographer. So we have thousands of photographs. Yeah. So to pick, the 4 that are going to go on a page, you're going through hundreds.
So tell us about, like you talked about, I had that written down too. Like give us some travel place you've been, like where's somewhere you've been recently that was like, this is awesome.
I kind of like the
somewhere you hated as well.
Well, Los Angeles, I've never been.
That's on the love list? Is it LA?
I didn't get that much of a chance to really explore and really do some sightseeing, but from, it was a business trip. We had an art show there at the end of January, beginning of February, and it left an impact. It was interesting. I lived in Denver for a little bit, which was, so it's got the same kind of West Coast mentality. It's a little more, I want to say, kind of all over the place. They got a lot of different neighborhoods, which I kind of like. So sure. It was bigger than just the city of itself. And there's suburban, different neighborhoods and things like that. But I love England for the most part.
Yeah.
That's my favorite place. Actually, more than Paris, I love London. You know,
I like. I've been to London twice. Twice, a couple times. And
Yeah.
it's always fun. Like,
I like
it's
the
a really
diversity.
cool city. Yeah, it's a really cool place.
Yeah, any of those.
I'm not a
hubs-
big LA guy personally. I think I'm too East Coast.
Yeah.
You know, like LA. For those of you guys that have never been there, it's super spread out.
It's very
Like
spread
it's
out. Yeah.
the
yeah.
opposite of New York. You know,
Yeah.
like you and I are back and forth to the city all the
Yeah.
time. Like New York and LA couldn't be further from each other.
No,
You know,
no,
like,
no. And
not
that-
geographically, but like culturally. You know, and me, I like the rat race. You know, I
Yeah.
like the abrupt, fast pace of things. I like the fact that I can jump on the subway and go uptown to downtown super fast. So LA is not really my thing. I've been there maybe like 5 or 6 times, but
Yeah, this was
I
my
like
first.
the East Coast stuff.
So I may agree with you eventually, but you know, from the get go,
The first time's always the best. Every time you go somewhere,
Yeah.
unless it's terrible. I went to Houston a couple months ago, and just I don't know why. No offense to the people from Houston, but it was awful. I just didn't like it at all. But normally, like if you go to somewhere, the fact that it's new and you haven't been there it makes it awesome, even if it's not that
Yeah, but-
awesome.
but
Even
some
if it
of those-
doesn't play out long term to be
some of
awesome.
those places though that you do visit new, you kind of fall in love with. You know?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
The reason that I liked LA is because it really caters to artists. I mean, people they say.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got the music industry and the movie. I mean, the movie industry in particular, movie and television, and everything like that.
Yeah, it's a
Which-
very supportive network. And,
I'm sure. I'm sure.
and there's a lot of.
I'm sure they're a lot
great
more
art.
open-minded to it than
Very
a lot of other cities.
open-minded, and it's like New York. It's just more spread out and bigger. Obviously, you could be in Midtown and you could be in Brooklyn within 30 minutes by subway.
Yeah.
In LA, it could either take you 10 minutes or it could take you an hour to get to the same, a place
to go
the same
to
distance.
go just across, quote unquote, across town is
Yeah,
40
exactly.
miles,
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
What's up with the art world? What's the current trend, so to say? What's the stylistic trend? What's hot right now in the art world, and what after you give us that, I'll ask you about if there's ways to make money. Like where are people making money in the art? But start out with the what's cool.
So,
Like if I'm going to buy something now,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it in my house, and people are like, "Dude, you're on the cutting edge. What's the new stuff going on? What's hot?"
So, from like a logistical standpoint, there's only really 3 ways to sell art. So you have contextual. So what's the context? Where is this artist in the grand scheme of things? Emotional, which is, how does it make you feel? Some people are more emotional than, they're collecting art because it just makes them feel great, or, reminds them of a loved one or whatever. And then there is, the kind of personal attachment that they might have to it, as far as, it doesn't matter, or, it's like an investment aspect to it. So is this piece going to be worth something?
Yeah,
Whatever.
same as if I'm buying a stock.
Yeah, most people are kind of a hybrid of those things.
Okay.
So, which is something that we always.
So the first one would be more so notoriety. You're saying, like, I'm buying this piece because this person did it that I know. It has nothing to do with the
going back to Picasso, for instance.
it's like buying a pair of Michael Jordan shoes.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm buying them because they're Jordan.
Let's call it the tax write-off art, okay?
Sure.
So, like, if you're buying a Picasso, you know that it's probably going to appreciate in value. How fast, you don't know, but you know that it's not going to be, something that you'd sell in a yard sale 10,
Sure.
20 years from now, right? So, so nowadays, what's popular is a lot of urban graffiti art, contemporary art, and to tell you the truth, going to the latest art fairs around the country, it's kind of all over the place. I mean, there's really no kind of definitive aspect of it. It's really just kind of, the galleries that specialize in different kinds of art.
So the trend is not following a particular trend? Almost?
No, I mean, well, like historically, you look, you had the Impressionists, you had, modern art, and you had, the Picasso with, the Cubism, you had Surrealism with Dali, you had the, abstract expressionists. Then what happened was you have pop art, and you have people like Warhol and Keith Haring and Jean-Michel Basquiat who came in afterwards that kind of like redefined it. And because that was redefined, it kind of created a free-for-all environment where now kind of anything goes. And it's a little bit...
Is that good?
I think it's natural. Personally, I think things will eventually kind of settle in, but also I think in the long term it'll be more of a positive thing, because people will just not be kind of, categorizing or discriminating against certain art because it's not particular to the taste, which is kind of what they're doing now. So, you have people that are just like, oh, well, that's not too contemporary for me. Where
it doesn't fit the genre.
Yeah, you're like, that's not obscure enough for my taste, which is
understood.
Which is kind of where things are now, and that to me is kind of scary because who knows where that'll take us. But for the most part, the real true art collectors know what they want and they know where to go, and that's really what keeps the business sustainable. As long as you have that definitive thing to it.
So, kind of wrap us up here, since obviously this is we're a traditional business. Like, tell us a little about your past experience in business and into art, and how you see like kind of your future playing out as somebody studied business, got into business, moved into art, and now you're kind of doing the business side and the art side. Like, what can we learn from the art community to make our business life better, and where do you see kind of your life evolving from here? Both as an artist and as a business person. Well,
I think creative problem solving, that definitely is one of the things that on a day-to-day business or in the day-to-day life of an artist is something that is a business decision. Whether or not, you're even going to make one stroke with the brush of paint. You're deciding on where that placement is. Same way as it applies to a business decision, So we have a retail fine art gallery and studio in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Andre Art Gallery, where, we decide to, what will be featured on the walls, so that, that's a business decision. If a person walks into your gallery, what do you want them to see first?
Sure.
That in itself, you think that it's like a simple thing, but then again, like if you break it down, it could be kind of an
and that's where like the salesmanship and marketing background kind of come into play.
Exactly, and the same thing as in going into another gallery that that's a potential place that you want to represent your art. You're presenting them. You're not if an artist has 1,000 works of art, you're only going to present them 5 of the best pieces or the pieces that you think will be fit for that place. So that's a business decision in itself, and I think it applies for anything and any other business. Is like, okay, one time I learned the idea of an elevator pitch, and that's something that, like, if you're with a business savvy individual and you're a small entrepreneur, but you know that this guy is going to get you to where you want to be because of his means and his resources and something like that, and say you walk into an elevator with him and you got 20 floors to get to the bottom level, like, how are you going to present yourself? Yeah, you have 30 seconds to present your idea, what you want that guy to know and understand, the strengths and weaknesses and all that. So simplifying it in that way and understanding where you are, I think, is the best way that any of those things are translatable to any other business, because ours is visual. For some people, it's what you can provide, the trust, the determination, whatever it is. Whatever the strength is, depending on the business model.
Sure.
I think to be able to identify yourself coming from an artist, and an identification is the biggest part of our business. as each, there's millions of artists in the world. That I think is probably the most common translation.
What about habit-wise? Like what, obviously, like a lot of people out there say, oh, well, I'm not an artist because I'm not talented enough in that particular capacity or whatever. That's fine. So be it. Let's just say that's true.
Mm-hmm.
What can, let's say I'm a 21-year-old that normal background, but I want to be king of the world one day. I want to take over the world and have a massive business. What can an artist teach me, motivation-wise, habit-wise, work ethic-wise, whatever, that's relevant that I can learn and say, oh, Dennis Andreevich does this. So if I do that, I can apply that still to my life.
Well, it's funny that you should ask Tim, because it was something that I learned from you, and that's systems, and that's creating little systems for yourself, recognizing the procedure, whether it's stretching a canvas or getting yourself prepared or, going to visit someone to take notes and writing down what you're going to do step by step. The one thing that I recognized even after working with you and recognizing the importance of having systems and procedures and just a step-by-step process that's fleshed out and that's understandable and easily translatable to anyone. Like if you were to drop what you're doing, you could easily write down a step-by-step thing to someone that could take over, for instance.
Sure.
That's something that I think is the most important thing, is creating or breaking it down at the end of the day and creating a simple step-by-step procedure of doing things, whether whatever the task may be. You know what I mean? Maybe even a phone call, and just writing down a common phrase that you might use in the phone call so that you can use it and replicate it over and over again. That's so that you're not at a loss for words or something like that. Or if it's a theme of artwork, or the process in which you're doing it, okay, so first, if for instance, you have to prime the canvas, or you stretch the canvas, then you prime the canvas, and you let it dry, and then.
But you're saying everything has the best people out there have a systematic approach to getting it so that it's
on
what
point.
They want. Everything's as perfect as
that's the quality.
Perfectly imperfect.
Quality control.
And
McDonald's.
Same thing. If I'm a business guy, I should be doing the same thing.
100%.
If I'm trying to make hamburgers, like you're saying, with McDonald's. If I have a systematic approach to it, I have a lot more scalable, bigger business that's more capable of having a perfect product.
Yeah, organization and structure. A lot of artists that I've interacted with, do not necessarily have those kinds of things. I mean, they do, but they don't recognize it themselves that they have those processes and things like that. Mm-hmm. And being consciously aware that you do have those things will definitely strengthen you a lot more, because most artists don't have the business background. They don't understand how those things can be impactful in their own, success.
Sure.
Things like that. Even little things. I mean, just how your day's planned out, how your week is planned out. Knowing that every Monday or Friday or whatever day you choose, you're going to figure out, okay, well, next week I'm going to do this, this, and that. Simple as that. Yeah. Not as, you're winging it all the time. I mean, sometimes winging it works. I mean, don't get me wrong. I took my SATs.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that was awesome, man. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming down to Philly. Dennis and I probably hung out more than most of the people I kind of grew up in the business with. I think we spent a lot of time together when we were working together directly. And literally go online, follow this dude. The art's awesome. He comes from an awesome family that really cares about each other, cares about the community. Gives back a lot. It's awesome. So support these guys. And same thing, I think, for the people out there. It's cool to see, somebody that's not the business guy doing business stuff, but you can still pick up, things here and there from. So Hopefully I had a good time.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have to do this again.
Time. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for inviting me.
Look out for the follow-up. We'll have to do episode number 2. Maybe Catalina will actually let us get on film.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We can be online for you guys.
Yeah. I'll do my hair next time.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
Where the time, man? Like, Jesus. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Shout out. Square up with GraySquare. Follow Dennis Andreevich.
And Andre Protuk.
Yep. Have a good day. Later.